Welcome back everyone, it is Eric from Rare Candy, and today we're going to be checking out my current deck list for the brand new Copperajah EX. And this deck actually comes to you at the request of one of Rare Candy's patrons, Fred Neilan. So big shout out to Fred for all of his support and requesting this deck to appear on the channel. But Copperajah EX, it's one of these cards that I think is getting lost in the shuffle a little bit, with people being focused on other new cards like Iono and Chien-Pao. But this card, as you'll see, it's a pretty tanky Pokemon, it hits like a truck, and I definitely think it still deserves to be explored, which of course is what we're going to be doing today. But before we get into the actual list itself, just a heads up guys, if you need any Paldea Evolved cards for yourself, be sure to grab any of your sealed product over at flipsidegaming.com. Use coupon code RARECANDY for 10% off, plus you'll get free shipping. But for some reason, if Flipside is out of stock by the time you see this video, you can also use my affiliate link with TCGPlayer. They'll show you all of the next cheapest online listings, and it really does help support the channel too. I'll have links to all these today down below in the description. But let's get into the deck list. So to kick things off, we have 4 copies of Cufant. And while this card isn't too important most of the time, I do think this is probably the optimal one to use just because it does have a single energy attack. And being a single strike Pokemon also does open up weird plays you can make if your opponent has like a Tower of Darkness in play. But most of the time, we just need this guy to evolve. But from there, we have 3 copies of Copperajah EX, new Pokemon EX we're getting in the Paldea Evolved set. And this thing is an absolute unit. Stage 1 Pokemon clocking in with 300 HP. But on top of that, it also has an ability that reduces any damage done to it by 30. So effectively, you're stage 1 with 330 HP if your opponent's trying to knock you out. And then its only attack for 2 metal and a colorist is 260, but then it does do 30 damage to each of your benched Pokemon. So damaging our own benched Pokemon is admittedly a little bit annoying, though if we have other Copperajahs in play, they're actually not going to take the damage due to its ability. But unfortunately, this card is a little bit clunky to power up now that we've lost Metal Saucer, and we need some sort of other energy acceleration engine if we do want to get this guy powered up. And the way we're going to choose to do that with this deck is going to be with the Magnezone back from Astral Radiance that has the Giga Magnet ability, where we look at the top 6 cards of our deck and we accelerate any metal energy there to our Pokemon in any way that we like. And also, I do want to highlight, this is probably the correct Magnemite to play in the deck too. We're usually not going to attack with it, but its typing is particularly relevant for another card that we're going to get to in a bit. So we have a copy of Lumineon B to search a supporter out of our deck. We also have a copy of Radiant Greninja for that concealed card's ability. We can discard energy from our hand and draw 2, which is perfect because we play a ton of energy in this deck, so we're pretty much always going to have access to this ability. And the final Pokemon of the list is going to be 1 copy of Manaphy just to protect our bench Pokemon. Unfortunately, it will not stop our own Copperajah EX. That would actually be really helpful, but in the early game, if we're going against a deck like Lost Box or Chien-Pao that plays their own Radiant Greninja, we do need to get this down to make sure our Magnemites can actually survive for a turn or 2 until they can evolve. But let's get into our trainer cards. From there, we have 4 copies of Professor's Research just to discard our hand and draw 7. So even though I don't like discarding our hand a lot with this deck, I really just want to guarantee that we can get the turn 2 Magnezone plus the Copperajah, and Research is definitely the support that helps us see the most cards in that regard. But we also have 2 copies of the brand new Iono supporter card, where both players shuffle their hands, put them at the bottom of their deck, and then they both draw equal to the amount of prize cards they have remaining. So in the early game, this is actually another pretty decent way to get set up. We can see 6 cards without having to discard anything from our hand. But of course, in the late game, that's where the card becomes much more impactful by being able to put your opponent at like a 3 to even maybe a 1 card hand. But from there, we have 2 copies of Irida, which might seem a little bit weird since we are largely a metal-based deck, but if you notice, we actually do play 3 water Pokemon in the deck as well. But Irida is here to help complete certain combos you're trying to piece together in your hand. So for example, a lot of times you might just have a Magnezone, but no rare candy. Well, instead of having to research away your Magnezone and try to find Magnezone plus candy, well, in that case, you can just use Irida instead and guarantee the second piece of your combo you're going for. And the fact that 2 of our water Pokemon can also help us draw cards sort of helps offset the lack of draw power that Irida has. We have 2 copies of Serena in the deck, so of course we can gust up Pokemon V with this, but also I do like this draw effect that we have here. So of course you do have to discard up to 3 cards from your hand, and then you refill your hand up to 5. So it's not like a ton of draw power, but I do like this because there are turns where, again, you might have, let's say a Magnezone, or let's say the rare candy in hand, but you don't have the other piece. Well, you can save that card and discard maybe the other cards in your hand to find that second combo piece. But from there, 2 copies of Boss's Orders to round out our supporter cards. And for our stadium, we're choosing to play Crystal Cave here, which I think makes a ton of sense. We're already trying to tank with our Copperajahs, but I think one of the bigger reasons we want to play Crystal Cave is because we need to heal our own Pokemon from time to time. Especially if we have a lingering Magnemite on the field and we can't manage to evolve into it, well, we're going to be doing 30 damage over and over every turn, and we actually run the risk of knocking out our own Pokemon if we can't heal this thing or evolve into a Magnezone. And this is also the reason, like I said, that this is probably our preferred Magnemite, because of course Crystal Cave heals 30 from all of your Metal and Dragon Pokemon. But heading into our item cards, we have 4 copies of Ultra Ball, of course to discard 2 cards from our hand and search our deck for any Pokemon. But along with it, we also have our 4 Nest Balls just to be able to search out our basics. So nothing too fancy with our Pokemon search options. And as you'll see, just in general, our item cards are pretty streamlined for this deck. We have 4 copies of Rare Candy as well. As you saw, we play no copies of Magneton. We are electing to skip our stage 1 and just go directly into our stage 2 here. And we're playing the 4 count just because we want to guarantee the turn 2 Magnezone. And even in the mid and late game, like I said, guys, if we have a lingering Magnemite on the field, evolving it is actually one way we can prevent our Copperajahs from knocking it out. So Rare Candy, maxing this thing out, I think just makes a ton of sense for this deck. We have 2 copies of the brand new Super Rod, where we shuffle in 3 of any combination of Pokemon and basic energies from our discard back into our deck. And speaking of getting energy back in deck, it is just so important for this deck because of course our Magnezone is reliant on accelerating energy from deck. It's not from hand, it's not from discard. So we need ways like this to be able to ensure that energy is always stacked in our deck. I think you maybe could opt to cut like one of these for an energy recycler if you wanted to go that route, but doubling up on Super Rod just kind of seems like it gives you the best of both worlds here. And then from there, guys, just 2 copies of Choice Bell to increase our damage to Pokemon V by 30, which is pretty important because our Copperajah does hit for 260, which is a great number that's one-shotting basic Pokemon V, like Miraidon, Qianpao, etc. But we are a little bit shy of knocking out things like Arceus, like Giratina, and we do need Belt to help us get over that 280 HP hump. And then from there, guys, we have 14 basic Metal Energy to round out our deck list. So honestly, this is probably as low as I would go. I actually would like to have a higher count, but I just kept finding I had to make cuts for additional consistency cards in this deck. So if you can carve out space for a 15th or a 16th energy, by all means do it. But like I said, 14 I feel like is kind of the bare minimum if you want to ensure you can hit your energies with your Magnezones. So that's where I'm at right now with the Copperajah EX deck. This list, as you can see, I think is no bells and whistles, just straight to the point, as consistent as you're probably going to get with a deck like this. But I definitely want to hear from you guys today. What do you think about Copperajah EX? Do you think this card does have any potential? Is there maybe a different way you would try to build around it? Let me know your full thoughts down below in the comment section. But as always, guys, if you did enjoy today's content, remember to smack that like button for me. Or if you're feeling maybe a little extra generous and want to take that support to the next level, you can also become a patron at patreon.com/rarecandytcg or pick up some merch at rarecandytcg.com. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.